Hello everyone and welcome back to Zero to Hero, the actual final episode. We managed to get Keystone Hero in this episode. I'm so excited to show you and talk about the journey and my thoughts and opinions about how we got here, and then also just to show you the different keys that we got into. So the footage you're gonna see is gonna be over the duration of 2 resets, or 2 weeks. So the first reset here, we actually managed to pick up the 444 cape. Overall, I think the vaults has been kind of disappointing a little bit. We did manage to get a weapon really early on, which is extremely lucky, and I guess that, our luck kind of ran out, but no trinkets. But as I said, the cape is an eye level upgrade. We go up to 434. That's difficult to say. And as you also can see here, we still have some work to do. We still have a 12 and a 13 Halls of Infusion and Vortex Pinnacle that we will give a lot of IO if we can bump that up. As well as some 15s and some 16s that we can also push into some 18s. Now, this is probably me going against the biggest advice, which has been to use my own key. And I would also say that if you are new or inexperienced, that, use your own key. That's a really good way. But when you actually start getting some gear and you start getting some IO, you can actually single out specific dungeons that you really want score on. And sometimes the dungeon finder, finding a group, can definitely work. Sometimes it's faster than just doing your own key. So bounce in between them. But yeah, here we are in our 16th Halls of Infusion. We, of course, this first week have the affixes Incorporeal and Spiteful, which is extremely easy to deal with when you're playing as a range that also has a way to deal with Incorporeal, which I believe is every class at this point, right? I believe they fixed it, so everyone actually has something they can use against them, which is it makes this week extremely easy. I don't really have to worry about Spiteful at all. I have plenty of fears and other ways to get rid of them. As well as, as I show right here, plenty of things is Incorporeal. So really no issue affix-wise this week. And that also means that the halls is going pretty smoothly. We so far only have one death. But actually what is interesting about this run is we only actually managed to one-chest it, even though we only have a few deaths at the end. I believe it's 3. And the reason for that is because this week we are playing, Tyrannical. And that last boss on Tyrannical is not necessarily difficult, but oh my god, does it just takes forever with the intermission. And that's actually really what's gonna slow us down. Also just in general, this gauntlet right here. I honestly think that this gauntlet is one of the easier ones in in WoW, to be honest. Of all the gauntlets that Blizzard has introduced, I think this is definitely one of the easiest one. It's all you really have to do is just sometimes look at or position yourself where you can react in time to these waves, right? So you don't get stand all the way too close or you turn your back towards them or anything. As long as you just have a slight awareness of where these spirals or these water waves are coming from, then yeah, this is going to be absolutely perfect. The same thing with the intermission with the last boss. Just honestly take your time. Really, it's so much better to take an extra 3 seconds, or how long it takes for you to be 100% sure that where you're going, than it is to, well, in the worst case, die. That's really my biggest advice for the last boss. It's also, another advice is, when he's right before he's casting all the spirals, stand close, right? Because they will go where you are. So if you stand close as he's casting it, and then as soon as this swirlies are spawning, you can just freely move on the other side of the boss, and you will have a whole area completely clear of it. This is a little bit tricky to deal with in PoCs, because you will always have one person who just goes all the way on his own and you can't really do much about it. But yeah, if you're watching this, then a little quick tip is simply just to make sure you stack up when he's casting the swirlies, and then as soon as the swirlies is spawning, you have free room. But with that, I also really want to as this is the final episode, I actually want to highlight a little bit about my journey and my experience and what I thought about playing as a Warlock. So all the way back in episode 1 with like leveling, having to choose the Warlock actually came from I wanted to play a class that I didn't have super much experience with. Now I of course have played Warlock before. Actually back in Shadowlands I had a little bit of like, you know, I dabbled a little bit in Destruction Warlock and enjoyed it very much, but stopped around the lower end keys just as an alt and like, you know, distraction from my mains. And yeah, besides that I really haven't had that much experience, especially not pushing into like higher keys. Now for season 2 here, this season, I actually did end up maining mage, so I was actually used to a range casters, and I actually, looking back at it, I might should have picked something like a melee just to like, you know, really try something like completely different. But I guess I was a little bit scared, a little bit nervous, so I stuck to something that I was just a tiny bit familiar with, which was, of course, was casting. But let's go in depth about like the Warlock here. If you watch the first videos, I think the first and the second video, I was contemplating between playing Demonology and playing Destruction. And I'm so happy that I ended up playing Destruction, because at least with those two specs, comparing them to each other, Destruction really just feels like the best for Mythic Plus. Like, it feels like it's being designed around like dungeons and stuff like that, because of course Demonology has AoE and single target just as well as like Destruction does, but if Destruction definitely feels a lot more variable. It feels a lot more that you have a lot of options to like, you have good AoE to a lot of targets, and you also have a great AoE with like Havoc, you know, cleaving them if the tank is pulling shorter, or like you have boss mechanics where like you have to cleave and stuff. The Warlock, like rotationally and like combat wise, feels like they have an answer for every encounter in Mythic Plus. So that has been extremely enjoyable, that I haven't really felt any specific situations where I felt worse or not as good as like other classes, right? Like there's only situations where I feel better, right? Which is really, really great when you're playing. And those situations is like when I can really like use Havoc a lot, which is something that I honestly hated in the beginning, having to use Havoc. And the like more I pushed into higher keys, and you know, that's gonna be the whole conclusion of this like Warlock thing, is that, you know, higher that you push into higher, the more you push into higher keys, sorry, you get a lot more value out of your both, you know, your offensive utilities, but also definitely your defensive utilities. So with Havoc, you know, in the lower keys, when I was first like, you know, was trying it out and like using it, honestly things just died way before I could really like get a lot of my Havoc. But now into the higher keys, things don't really die that quickly, meaning that you can get so much value out of this, and you really feel like you're getting like, the skill aggression really, really shines the higher you push on a Warlock. So yeah, I mean, the Warlock is just one of those classes that just feels a little bit wonky and not really that great to play if you're really but if you're playing lower keys. And the more experience I've had with playing the Warlock into higher and higher keys, the more fun I've actually had on the Warlock. So one of the issues that I had on the Warlock, that at least I've been like vocal about, is the tier set. I still don't really think the tier set is that interesting. It's a damage increase that you see in the numbers, but you don't really feel in the gameplay, if that makes sense. Like, it's not that impactful, just like right. It's kind of like, you know, with Wandering, if you remember back in season 1, Wandering gave like a really, really huge damage increase, but you just never really felt it. And there is some workaround here, like with the Warlock's tier set, that, you know, you decide when to like channel the demon bolt, like, so you can like decide when to get that big damage increase. So there is definitely some skill expression. I'm not denying that at all. Like, you know, the Warlock who best managed to when to like really utilize his damage increase here is the Warlock that's gonna shine the most. But my experience with it in the lower keys was simply just that everything died before you really could like utilize it or get any value out of it, which really like put a damper on the whole like, you know, gameplay, right? And that actually created, and this is my like me issue here, I'm not really playing the class design on this, but that actually led me to like get this really bad habit of I would use Channel Demon Fire to like as an execution kind of. So I would like, you know, like use the execute and then hoping that the tank, because I usually do pull pretty quickly in lower keys, I would have the damage buff rolling into the next pack. Going into higher hierarchies, this is definitely something that I had to like unlearn a little bit, which kind of sucks that, you know, I created this bad habit. But yeah, I really like this. It really did not work at all in lower keys and also medium keys for that matter. It kind of did feel a lot wonky. Pushing into the higher keys and actually like getting more use of your channel like Demon Fire, and also maybe even get it on multiple like using it multiple times in a boss fight is that actually I could kind of see the appeal here, to be honest. I still, as I mentioned in the beginning, I still overall think it's on the like more boring side of the tier sets, but it is extremely valuable, and it has some skill expression that I can't deny. So overall, I think it's like it became like yeah, like a 6 or 7 out of 10, to be honest, of like the tier sets. Now, the other big negative that I've been vocal about that actually did not change when I, you know, pushed into higher keys and more difficult content was simply just the fact that Warlock is, I'm pretty sure, one of the classes, if not the class, that gets punished the most from like movement. So my other big like complaint about the Warlock that I also have been vocal about that haven't changed has been movement. And especially how I feel like Warlock is for sure one of the classes that is the most punished by movement. Now, it doesn't help that Chaos Bolt is like your big single target damage and also actually cleave target, and it does have a pretty long like casting time. But what punishes the Warlock more than that is simply just that when you're moving, you can't really generate any shots. And of course it is true that you have an instant cast, but that has a pretty like long cooldown in order to like get it up, so you can't really like use it in like, you know, very often when you have to move. And as well, someone will probably also mention that you Immolation Aura, which is, you know, your dot, also generates shots over time or over like when it does damage. But that also, it's like on its own is such a low amount of shot generation that you don't really get much out of it. You have to like actually cast something else in order to like sustain your shot generation. In practice, this actually means that if the Warlock doesn't have his feet planted on the ground and just firing away spells, he's not going to generate any shots. That means that you're not really going to do any damage, and it's really going to be like difficult to catch up for other like, you know, DPS specs who might have like, if you don't have like your Infernal Sub or anything, it can be difficult to like catch back up. And this is something that's been extremely difficult to like, and something that's been very noticeable when you're playing dungeons, that if you like have a tank that all of a sudden decides to pull the next pack or like run ahead and all the mobs are chasing him, while everyone else might, you know, be able to throw up some, like a Moonkin can like, you know, throw up some dots, or just to give like the extreme example, you have a Beastmastery Hunter who can do the entire rotation while, you know, they are moving. You are just kind of not being really able to do anything unless you can like get in a position of like planting your feet down and just becoming like the sentry, right? And like, don't get me like wrong here, there's like some balance around it, because if you can become a sentry and you really don't have to move, your damage will skyrocket. So this actually doesn't really become a complaint, because this is just fundamentally how the Destruction Warlock works. It definitely, don't get me wrong, it definitely sucks to be punished from moving, but on the other side, what the Warlock actually forces you to do is to be very noticeable of these movement mechanics. What that actually means is that in practice, playing a Warlock, you might have to move a few seconds before everyone else does, or you have to pay more attention to how you're gonna like solve these movement bits, because you have a lot of it in your toolkit to fix them, but you have to be aware of them a lot earlier than other classes might have to do. Or, as I said, you will get punished. Now, I just want to also just show off with this clip that I am actually also like pushing my own key. Sometimes I've noticed it's been really strange, because as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, it's a really good advice to push your own key, but I've actually been noticed that there are just some keys that are kind of just dead, and especially there are also, you know, key levels. Like here I am with a 19 and I do end up getting it filled, but why would you play a 19 if you can just do a 20? And why would you know, if you're just going after crest, you would just do a 17, because then you also get, you know, the gear, or like a 16 maybe even. Like 19 is a little bit of like a weird number. You are definitely getting people who, I'm generalizing here, but usually you are getting people who can't really push into 20s or want to push into 20s. And yeah, so it can take like a long time to fit the right group and get the like right people. But the biggest advice here, if you want to like, you know, actually push into higher keys, have patience. Patience is the biggest tester. It's the biggest like challenge to get over. Be patient, and like, you know, a good group will come up. Underwood really reminds me a lot of like Quarter Stars from last season, with the whole, there isn't actually a lot the healer can do. It's simply just like, you know, are you gonna dodge the mechanics or not, because else you just one-shot it. Right here, for example, I get rooted and then I get the frontal like turned right against me. And I actually noticed right here, I do actually have my defensive up that I could use, but I just don't do it in like, you know, I don't have the reaction time to actually do it. So that's like, you know, my bad. I also called it out here, you know, that like, hey, you know, I'm sorry that I died twice to the frontal, but it isn't really much. You need to be aware of this if you're like if you're not already. In a dungeon like Underwood, there's not really much a healer can do. You did notice that we pulled these small worms there in the beginning, and they do explode on death if you were not aware. Yeah, they took like half of our health, so you can see that like you don't really have room to do many more mistakes than that. Now, this third boss is actually a good example of what I was trying to explain earlier with the whole movement and the Warlock, right? So this boss, as you're probably aware, spawns a lot of these mushrooms. And what I actually think I'll start picking up on in the middle of this fight is that I need to be better at positioning myself earlier, right? Like 4 seconds, even before I actually am 100% sure I get the mechanic, I need to stand there where I need to stand. And you can do this because you do actually have small windows. So like, yeah, I do have an instant cast, and I use those movement, like those abilities to move, right? Those are like the moments so you don't not just stuck, not doing anything for multiple seconds. You want to like pull, like use your movement in like small bursts. My other PSA here, or like, you know, my huge tip is just to sacrifice yourself on this boss fight. If you see that like multiple mushrooms are still up when the boss is doing the big AoE, and if you have an immunity, absolutely use it. But even if you don't, like usually the tank should do it because he has the more survivability. But sometimes, you know how it is with Pox, sometimes your tank just won't do it. So it's better just to run in yourself, get as many like, you know, mushrooms as you can get. And then just, you know, yeah, worst case, you might die, but your entire party might survive of it. So absolutely sacrifice yourself if it's needed. But man, we actually end up just one-chesting this 19, and it was definitely difficult. You can see we don't have that many deaths. We actually don't have a death since the beginning there in the first pull. I'm happy that no one left or said anything, but we do actually, I believe, have like overall pretty low damage, as well as the tank kind of pulls just a tiny bit slower. If I remember correctly, the tank is a little bit undergeared, but timing it does mean we actually end up getting into our very first 20. And I also just want to highlight this. This is a little bit skewed by, it being so late in the season, but like the people who join at 20 is so overgeared and usually has pretty good score that like this is just proof that like people know what's up, and this is like 20s are just easier than what like a 14 or 13 or a 15 might actually be, simply just for like the people that you're playing with now. Overall, the run goes pretty smoothly, but I do like, especially here, like the first pull is so incredible. It's one of the most fun pulls in the entire season pool, like a mid dungeon pool, like right now. You have all your cooldowns, you have everything going, you have like plenty of packs, and you only need to like stop one cast, and then of course stop casting when the airy shout is coming. There's like very few mechanics to deal with here, making this pull an absolute like classic in my opinion. But I really want to highlight this because I've never seen this actually happen before. So look right here. So instead of going right, the tank goes left. And he also pulls these extra packs. And I am sure that we are going to wipe. I see multiple different colored nameplates, meaning that there are multiple casts I need to be aware of. We do have one frozen target over there, which is really, really good for the hunter, which actually is the hunter from the Underwood. He signed up again and I just took him on because I noticed how incredible he was at dealing with Incorporeal, which is also another thing right here. If you want like Puck, a really good advice would also just to be like, stick, if you see someone that you enjoy playing with, hit them up. Ask them, do you want to go play some more? You can add them some friends and everything. And again, let's like go back here because like I really like, if you didn't notice, the tank was down at like 8% health. Absolutely incredible guy here. I don't know like how he did it, to be honest. Like he does go with I remember that he actually does have the other Demon Hunter talent build, the one where he has like a cheap death and reduces the cooldown of his demon spikes and all that, which is usually a little bit more of a defensive talent. So I'm pretty sure like that's the one that like really like made that pull possible. But incredible pull. So the third boss here was so close to ending in a disaster, if not for the like incredible save. So our priest got hit by the shock. Our tank is dying right here for who knows what reason, and then Corporal just went off. I managed to get my soul stone off right in the split second right before I die. Our tank gets up and they actually manage to solo the rest of the boss. I am sure that if I didn't manage to get this, if we had to like redo this, we wouldn't have like timed this dungeon. And just like that, our first 20 is timed. And that like puts us at like 2432 score, meaning we are only like just short of like 70 score away from getting Keystone Hero. And this dungeon is gonna be the last of the first week. So going into the next week here, we have of course my favorite affix, Afflicted. But before we go into that whole rant or all over again, let's look at what we got in the vault. Yeah, and as I said earlier, not really that interesting. I do pick up here this helmet, which is an item level upgrade. It's great, it's whatever, nothing too exciting. We're gonna start this week off with a 17 freehold to just warm up a little bit. So yeah, let's talk about Afflicted. So a few weeks ago, I made a Zero to Hero episode where I talked about Afflicted in a very long way because The thing is about afflicted is, as a Warlock and as many other classes, you can't really do anything about it. Like, you have no power over if they getting dispelled or healed or whatnot. Like, it's healer, and you know, with the afflicted, if you played, the healer can't really take all of them alone, so usually it's nice to have some hybrids in here, right? To like help take them. But the point is just that as a Warlock, I don't really have anything to do with this. And that led to incredibly amount of frustration, because last time I was playing afflicted on this Warlock, I was doing, I believe, like between 10s to 15s, like that key range. And as I mentioned in my earlier video with the brackets of like key levels, that was a really pain, because you would just have parties where people wouldn't invite a single person who can deal with it besides the healer. And then you would also have sometimes a healer who just wouldn't do anything about it. And then, you know, it just became a complete nightmare where every single like time they like went off, and yeah, absolutely horrible. But in these higher keys, who would have thought that people would actually, you know, deal with the afflicted? I really haven't had that many issues at all. I have seen sometimes 1 or 2 goes off, but like again, 1 or 2 is like fine going off. It's more of a problem if it's like almost every single time and it's a double that gets off, like, you know, so it's like along the it's like 200% hate reduction, right? That's awful. But yeah, no, really actually haven't really been like any big problems whatsoever as soon as you go into higher keys. And I want to like bring that point on further on the video, and I like, you know, really highlight like my big advice for all you guys who maybe necessarily haven't gotten Keystone Hero yourself. But me giving praise to these higher keys, talking about how they're so perfect, I'm gonna like highlight here a run that goes absolutely horrible. So this is a 20 Nefarious. This is my key that I got from the 20 freehold last week. And if you notice, the tank is already like, you know, at half health going into pulling these 2 packs. We are actually like really slowly getting them. Like it took like a few seconds extra. I don't know why he didn't heroic leap. But you'll see here, everything just goes horribly wrong. Now, if you didn't notice that, the tank actually right there just popped Shield Wall when he was at 20% when all of the damage had already been like dealt to him. That's when he decided to pop it. And more than like not, this is like what problem you run into when you push into 20s and above. It basically just becomes, can your tank survive the damage? Like all of these keys and these routes, all the like when you push into 20s and above, it all just becomes like tank dependent. And if you don't have a tank that can pull through, then there's just nothing you can do. Absolutely nothing at all. There is like things here. It's not all, I don't want to like give the impression that it's just 100% all the tank's fault, because there are definitely some kick issues here, and also like later on in the dungeon we have some issues of like, yeah, just things going off, as you can see. But yeah, these just because you push into hierarchies does not mean that every single dungeon run will go smoothly or you will time it. And I actually end up again disbanding here because I noticed that we have like 12 deaths without even reaching the second boss, and like I'm like realizing that there is no way in hell that we are timing this at all. It's gonna be extremely painful, and right there our tank dies once again. I do manage to get the battle rest out, but it has no point. Like he's the whole party's gonna wipe, he can't pick aggro, and then he's gonna die again. And I realized that instead of forcing myself through this untimed 20, not even sure if it goes 10 minutes over the timer, then you know you won't get score from it. So like I don't even know if like that's if I even would get score from like finishing it. So I just thought to myself, this is going to be a waste of my time and everyone else's time. Let me just go ahead and get the 19th. But I actually quickly lose my patience. No one was really signing up, so I just, you know, try to scout, can I get into like an underroot? And I can. Now before this run, like the last underroot on Fortified that I have time was a 14, if you didn't notice that right there. And I should probably have stopped and thought about, why am I invited into a 19 when I have only timed a 14 on Fortified? because just like the nefarious run, this is not gonna go very smoothly. But this time it's actually not the tank's fault. You see that the tank is at low health, but he's using his cooldowns like, you know, properly. He has them going out, and he also is running a more safely build. But you can see like right here on the first boss, which is not really, either this boss is a complete nightmare and will wipe your entire group, or it's like perfectly fine. And you see both body here dies to the frontal. I decide to, of course, when you have a battle res and you have 2 DPS down, don't panic. It's fine to wait a second just to figure out which is the best person to, you know, battle res, right? It's kind of stupid to pull someone like, you know, battle res someone who does like really low damage. So I decided to, you know, battle res the mage. But this whole thing did definitely freak me out, and you can see that we are like missing kicks and our tank almost falls down on this boss. Like, it's so important to interrupt these. If you are not aware what the boss actually does, is it throws this bolt on you that does insanely high damage, but also give you a really huge healing absorption. So you can't even get healed up like right away. So this is like, you can see I get hit right there and almost half of my health is gone, as well as some healing absorption. It's really, really nasty, and you really want it. But our tank is like keeping it together. He has no cheap death, nothing. This is a huge red flag if you can, like, if you're struggling this much on the first boss, because this is only gonna get harder from like now on. So this is also just like with yourself, when you have to like think about, because I mentioned this before, and it's something, it's a point it's a hill I want to die on, which is like, disbanding is not just black and white, good or bad. There are moments where like it's just better to respect your own time and everyone else's time and just calling it quit. And struggling this much on the first boss is definitely a red flag. But yeah, we do actually manage to pull through, and I'm optimistic. You know, I really want to get this score. This is going to be huge. Like, going from a 14 to 19, it's incredible IO. This could, like, you know, really just maybe even give me to Keystone Hero. Probably not, but as you can see, we pull so incredibly much. Our tank dies. And then this is also a huge pet peeve, but like, if the tank dies, it's often just better just to reset, like, you know, everyone dies instead of like keep pulling them back, because you can see now what's actually happening is that like a lot of their cast is gonna come like off sync because they're just like casting away, which means they can actually be quite harder to just AoE stop, and just becomes an absolute nightmare of like who has kick up and who doesn't. So sometimes it's just better just to die and reset the mob, especially if you're going to pull more by going back to the tank. Then definitely don't do it. And you can see here that everyone gets hit by the frontal, and just, yeah, incredibly sad. And that's like, you know, that's the end of that pull. Incredibly enough, no one leaves right away, but the tank actually asks, please be careful of ninja pulls, and then of course the warrior immediately ninja pulls again, which with, you know, the afflicted going off right there is a wipe on us, on our side. And after this, of course, people quit, people disband, but our healer did, you know, let out some steam, which I thought was pretty funny. Okay, and yeah, so with that little detour of the way, we go back to Nefarious this time and look at our, like, you know, our classes, right? We have a paladin, we have a druid, and we have a shaman. We have so many classes that can deal with afflicted that, like, this is going to be like so easy and no problem whatsoever. And also, like, look at this, like, you know, there's a huge extreme pull. I see, like, sometimes me personally, when I'm tanking it, I don't necessarily like, I think it's a little bit risky. I do die here because I am not paying attention at all to the ground, which is so stupid. Most of the other dungeon goes extremely, like, smoothly, but I really want to highlight this boss right here, the second boss, the chain boss, because this has really been the boss that has been the most dangerous and most challenging, especially pucking. I have experienced like in Neltharius on my Warlock. And if you remember in the start of the season, it was the Mammoth boss and the last boss that was like notorious for being extremely dangerous, and that this chain boss was not really that noticeable. But the thing is, and I mentioned this in my dungeon video, my last video I uploaded, about how the mechanics are actually not really that clear. So yeah, there is the chains that you need to like, you know, break, which is, I think is really like visually clear, and that made a lot of people like get that. What a lot of people don't really get, especially in lower keys, it's been better going higher and higher, is simply just that, you know, breaking the keys leave a debuff on you that stacks. So if everyone's break that chain at the same time, that's a party wipe, and that has been basically like most of the damage. People are not like, it's a boss fight that requires a lot of like teamwork and a lot of like, you know, communication and just awareness of what everyone else is doing and what you're supposed to doing. So, and that is, you know, really lacking in puck groups. You know, there are times where you see, if you see another DPS just immediately goes for breaking the chains, then you need to stop doing it, like, so you don't do it. And that's not really, yeah, I don't really see that a lot of pucks. So this has really been like a challenging boss, which I was actually really surprised about. Neltharius is also like right here, this pull right here is also a great example of like how a lot of the packs actually, like the danger wise, changes a lot when you go on to higher keys. So these like fire guys, elementals, and like will throw all these bolts which will damage, like when you go into 20s and above, will actually deal really a big amount of damage, as well as like there's also these like axe throwers that throw like bleeds on you that you need to like AoE stop and everything. And we basically just let everything through, and we have a healer and our shaman who dies from it. And it's just, you know, an example of like, this is not something you had to deal with in low keys, and all of a sudden this will just basically one-shot you. And it's something you need to be aware of when you're going into the high, that like the dungeon will change, and the danger of the different packs will also change with it. Forge Marshal is such a great boss. It's a boss fight I just honestly never get tired of playing. Like every single time, I think is incredible. It's so simple, because it's all about is just basically survivability, right? If you can survive it, you can kill him easily. It's not really about damage in that sense, same sense or anything. And I really like of like, you know, you need to balance out your defensives, you need to use them in the right time and in the right order and stuff like that. There's like some maximizing here. I think it's a really great boss. Yeah. And yeah, so that's gonna be a 2 chest, and we end up getting 23 score from it, which is, you know, incredible. And that's gonna lead us right into a bragging height 17. Unfortunately, this run is not gonna go so great as well as the previous Neltharius that I did. And again, not to point fingers at just one person, especially I don't want to send hate or anything to that guy, not whatever, but it's another like kind of good example of how these kind of keys just becomes like tank dependent. This pull right here is a durable pull, but it is actually really dangerous. And it requires a lot of focus on what mobs to kick and what not mobs that you can kind of like skip. And as mentioned before, you know, this group only becomes more and more dangerous. If you want to pull this, you need to be aware that that War Scourge will 9 out of 10 times, the second one I mean, be pulled. So it doesn't matter that, you know, to be surprised about it or anything. What I do when I'm tanking it is simply just to put a skull on one of them and just say, you know, guys, whatever you do, just make sure that skull gets kicked. I will take care of the other one. If you can do that, if you can keep those two focused, then, you know, you should be absolutely fine. But you see our tank's health here is just bouncing all over the place. He's getting smacked around. He's getting his like cooldowns like slowly up again, but yeah, it's not gonna be enough for us. Our heal is also struggling here with both like fixating and yeah, he's gonna lose focus and our tank is gonna go down. Now I'm saying tank dependent, and again, I don't want any hate on him, but our tank specifically, the monk here. But my issue with him, because you can see that he's using his defensives and he's using his stuff, and he is bouncing around. And with monk, you know, he doesn't really necessarily have that much control over his health bar. You know, they are not really that great at self-sustain. They're more in the healer shop. He has been proven, you know, he has seen that like throughout like our run so far that yeah, his health have been spiking a lot, and the healer seems to have a little bit of a slower reaction. He should, you know, limit his pulling into so like, you know, it becomes a little bit safer, but unfortunately he doesn't. And after 12 deaths and halfway timing it and only just reached the first boss, the evoker decides to leave the group. Yeah, well, nothing you can do besides keeping pucking. And we go back into Underworld actually. And I really want to highlight this second boss right here, because I think I mentioned it before. I definitely mention it almost all the time I'm pucking it. This boss does not actually do much damage, even if like he's using his tantrum right here, which is, you know, AoE damage. He actually doesn't. So that means you are not actually really in danger at all. The only time you're in danger is if these worms actually go off, or these ticks, or whatever you might want to call them. Damage doesn't matter on this boss, if you're a damage dealer. It really does not. You will get this boss down. The only thing that will wipe you and kill you is if you don't get these ticks. So just focus on those. Focus on the mechanics, focus on getting them down, and then, you know, it will fall over. And with this last boss right here, you will see how crucial it is to bait in the right direction, because now our entire party is just like split up completely. And you're gonna see us like running back, at least me, I'm gonna run into it, so I'll make sure to bait. But he goes the other way around, meaning that we are now closed off, and that causes us to actually wipe it. We do manage to like just time it, just barely, with like 14 deaths. So not a completely smooth run, but overall I think we did pretty like okay. We timed it, so like that's the best part, right? And then we do go back and we don't time a 19 Dragonflight, but we do actually get a fair bit of score from it. So we had 2487, meaning we're only one dungeon away from Keystone Hero, and that's of course going to be Vortex Pinnacle. And with that, I really want to like also ask you guys, the guys who are watching this and the people who have been watching maybe the entire series here, is I want your feedback. because not only am I like new to making videos and the whole YouTube thing, but I'm also, you know, this is my first time doing the Zero to Hero, so I'm like really not nervous. I'm really curious to hear what you guys liked about it, and if there's like things you like would like to see me do differently, or maybe, you know, maybe you would like me to do more live commentary, if like, you know, or you wanted more, yeah, just however, like you guys, if you have like any ideas or any like input or feedback, I would love to hear that. Absolutely. And for me personally, like it really has like made me quite sure that I want to go back to tanking this whole Zero to Hero. I was, when I first started, like, you know, figuring out what I wanted to like main, I was not really quite sure if I wanted to like what role. I was really nervous to do healer, but I am contemplating, you know, because I'm definitely bringing this series back for the next season, and I'm kind of thinking it's going to be between either a tank or a healer to like, you know, pop, but I'm gonna hopefully get your guys input on that as well. But yeah, I kind of realized that like I really miss tanking when I was playing this, and I was like parking these groups. I was like, oh, you know, not only the queue times, which has been extremely painful, right? I will show my overall played in just a few minutes here, but most of that has just honestly been in the queue, and I really have thought to myself that, oh, if I only just played a tank, then I would just get instantly invited. And it's also been the same thing when I'm in the dungeon, and something happens when I'm like, oh, if I was the tank, if I was leading the group here, I could have done something different that would like has like pulled us through or something like that. So really like highlighted here that I definitely enjoyed my time, but yeah, I think I'm ready to go back to tanking, and this series has really been the eye-opener for me. So yeah, there we go. As the final boss fails and we hit Keystone Hero. So yeah, thank you so much for like sticking with this series out at all. And as you can see here in my like tab, to get to Keystone Hero, you can actually time a lot of different key levels. You know, I only have 120 times, I believe. And I even have one untimed. So there is like a lot of like stuff you can do here to like, you know, to get Keystone Hero. And as you can see here on like my plate, it took me around like 2 days playtime from like getting from like level 70 to Keystone Hero, which I honestly don't think is that long. And I pushed myself to 437. So I'm not even like, you know, I could also like maximize my gear at all, like more even then. So yeah, I definitely just want to like highlight this and say that getting Keystone Hero is absolutely doable, and it's something I really think you should push yourself to doing if you're not like that comfortable with it, because this is like the main point of the whole like my experience with this. It's just that the game gets so much better if you push into higher keys, because you really like as you get more comfortable game and you get to play with other people who are also more comfortable and know a lot more about the dungeons, the game becomes a whole different kind of game. A lot of the fucking horror stories I hear are just mainly from the lower keys, and getting from Keystone Master to Keystone Hero, there is a step up, but it's actually not as much as you might think it is. It's definitely doable, and I definitely would highly recommend that you do it. But yeah, that has been me. That has been this Zero to Hero. Again, thank you so much for watching it and like following along, and I read all your comments and likes and subscribe, everything. Thank you so much, and yeah, I'll see you in the next video.